one or two sentences, what is the future of cybersecurity?
We are entering a new super cycle. If you're not understanding how AI is impacting whether you're cybersecurity focused, endpoint focused, cloud focused, doesn't matter what your technology background is, you're going to die. It's adapt or die at this point. Might be controversial. This might be a hot take. Is that your end customers are your first line of defense. So if they are not trained on how to identify some of the most basic forms of attacks, this is all in vain. And I will say that we do a really good job of showcasing examples of smishing, of phishing, of vishing, all of the things, all the ishings, if you will, because people, very easy to fool, and especially with AI.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick with the Cyber Pro podcast. Industry leaders share their insights. Today, we have Augie Staab. Augie, I'm excited. We have very few women in the industry that get to hop on, and whenever I have one, my God, it makes my life so much better. So, first off, thank you. And secondly, who are you and why are you awesome?
Well, I really appreciate the very, very warm welcome, Rick. And yeah, like you said, my name is Augie Staub. So for those of you who are tuning in and have never got to meet me before, I am our senior manager over go-to-market solutions for TD SYNNEX. That's a bunch of words to basically say that my team internally are the advocates for us to make sure that we're upstanding services, programs, initiatives to bolster resellers to either adopt or accelerate in a disruptive technology. So obviously, cybersecurity is one of those areas. And we also have coverage in other disruptive technologies like AI, cloud, ISVs, and we just dove into endpoint for the first time. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit of my team. That spans a lot of different types of initiatives, just depending on what that technology needs. But I'm very excited to talk a little bit about my favorite. I shouldn't have a favorite in the tech space, but I do. But cybersecurity is where I grew up and I learned everything I know now. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, let's start talking about some of your disruptive stuff that you guys are seeing because you guys have such a presence in the market. So I'd love to hear some of the top disruptive solutions you're seeing on the market. You don't have to name names, more just product sets.
More just product sets. Okay, that's a big one. So there's a few different things that come to mind for me. And since we're in the Cyber Pro podcast, I'm going to try to keep it in the cyber lane. But I mean, the first is in outcome based selling. I think this is fairly new, and this is really centric to our ISV strategy. So for a long time, we had partners, and we still have some who complain about tool sprawl. They talk about how they have way too many cybersecurity management platforms. But on the flip side of that, we do have partners who come in and they say, hey, we're approaching a new selling methodology in the cyberspace, and we're asking our customers, what is the experience you want to have at the end? And a lot of times that ends up navigating us to a very niche type of software or a very niche cybersecurity vendor that is really bolstering our ISV diversification strategy. I think that's number one that we're seeing. But on the flip side of that, it's also platformization. So I hate that word. I really do. It does not roll off the tongue, but I know that it's becoming like a standardized industry term. So we have, again, it's a very split playing field. You have our partners whom are really aligned to what I would consider like a channel giant in the cybersecurity space, only utilize their products. All of their control and management is centralized to like one platform, a true platformization model. But we have the other ones who are using our cloud marketplaces and platforms as their platformization, where they're centralizing all of the management of multiple, what I call best in breed cybersecurity tools into one place. So you're starting to see the divide here. We have very two different types of cybersecurity vendors that are coming on the scene. And then the third, if I had to pick a third one of like what I'm seeing that's being really disruptive, I have to talk about AI. Everybody has to talk about AI. And it's more so that we're finally seeing partners prioritize solutions where our cybersecurity manufacturers are integrating AI into their proprietary software. I mean, I think that it warrants the conversation, especially like in threat detection and response and some of those types of products that those vendors have an access to a large amount of data and how best to utilize that than to inject it into an AI engine to create predictive outcomes and analytics on new types of threats and new threat vectors. So we are seeing partners ask us who's using AI intelligence on their back end so we know that the cybersecurity solution that we're going to get and experience is going to be the best in the game. So that's probably the three biggest disruptive areas I'm seeing right now.
I love it. You're swinging for the fences at the first question here, so the big questions are there. I love it.
I told you this is my favorite technology. It's a lot of fun to sell.
It's awesome. So you talked about artificial intelligence, you talked about data, you talked about ISR, cloud security. You kind of hit all of them home. Where are you seeing the biggest disconnect between what partners think they need and what they might actually need?
So this is one that I have preached about many a times. A lot of the things that I'm talking about right now is what I call proactive security. This is the stuff that happens before an attack. It's preventative. And if you look at a true zero trust methodology, I mean, I think that is the methodology that 90% of our partners are trying to market themselves or lean into. You have 3 pillars. You have the identification pillar, you wanna know who has access, how they have access, what has access, and then you have throttling the access. That's the second pillar, making sure people only have access to the business applications or data that is, responsible what their job is responsible for. A lot of times our partners are missing the back end. And the third one, which is what do you do when something bad happens? And that is your instant response. That's your data recovery and your backup, your protection, things of that nature. I will say that swing and a miss 90% of the time, it's resellers. They are like, oh, it's not going to happen to us. We've got all the proactive measures in place, but they don't have a plan for when it does actually happen. And I think that that is, I've had so many conversations with partners. I'm like, what are you doing for your instant response plan? And that's really where we bring value and we sell. We say, hey, we have a program that assists with you defining that strategy. Because if you don't, it's not, and I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times on this podcast, it's not a if it's going to happen, it's a when it's going to happen. So that's definitely the big one.
Very true. So we are going to touch on artificial intelligence really quick. I'd like to have you share some insights around the adoption of AI and how it's impacting cybersecurity practices.
So the adoption of AI, I think, was a little rushed. That is my experience with it so far. Everybody wanted to get in, and what happened is they invested in a multitude of either platforms or tools with no real thought behind. Okay, what is the end outcome of us utilizing this, and then offering it down to our end customers. So due to that, it's caused cost constraints. And that is affecting a lot of our partners right now because they're saying, hey, we overinvested in this area. Obviously, IT budgets are not infinite. And so they're having to look at what I think is driving some of that hyperscaler adoption for platformization and also looking at more transactional or reoccurring billing models that you see in MSP. So that's probably a big one when it comes to AI. If I had to think of another one, it's also we've been talking a lot about how is AI being leveraged by our cybersecurity vendors that we're offering, but we're not talking a ton about the AI environments, whether it's agents or chatbots or whatever it may be, and how they're being contained. And I actually just had a conversation earlier today with a vendor for the first time that said, hey, we want to position ourselves to talk about all these partners who did invest in AI. How are they securing those environments now? And I was like, I'm so glad somebody brought this conversation to the table because everything has been on the more proactive integration within their proprietary software. So,
You mentioned, and I agree with you, that AI is definitely a rush. I'm typically seeing that artificial intelligence is being thrown through the window, every window, whether it's open or not. And a lot of companies are trying to figure out how best to fight back, whether it's an AI firewall, whether it's some sort of readiness assessment. But the one thing that I'm seeing that's really hitting home is they're also making this consolidation effort into a hybrid cloud environment.
mm,
And we understand, you and I understand, most people understand that cloud is somebody else's network, but you don't have as much control. You have different workloads that you have to control. And so with this hybrid cloud environment, I feel like we're rushing towards that again, as well as rushing towards artificial intelligence. How are those two combinations affecting the threat landscape of organizations?
well, I'm sure that a lot of people are gonna agree with me. It goes down to the responsibility of whom it's going to be to protect the environment. And I think that there's been a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of controversy on, is that on the platform providers to provide cybersecurity, or is it on the people who are utilizing the applications and the tools that are housed there? So that's the biggest area. That I can't say that I live on one side or the other. My stance in cyber has always been going above and beyond. Doing the bare minimum is not enough. And you always should go above and beyond. So I would say if I was a reseller and I started looking at a hybrid cloud strategy to maintain and manage some of my cybersecurity platforms or in my compute platforms, let's just say they're utilizing it for true infrastructure as a service. I would more so oversell the cybersecurity that is needed and critical to secure that environment than assume that that platform provider is going to be able to handle the cybersecurity for whatever sensitive information lives there. So,
I love it. I love it. I know that TD SYNNEX, you guys have excelled at helping customers, helping partners and their customers build cybersecurity practices from scratch. What do you think are the top 3 mistakes that customers typically make at the beginning of creating that cybersecurity posture?
so the first is having a repeatable methodology. I feel like people just kind of throw things at the wall. Let's say that I'm endpoint focused. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm endpoint focused, I'm just going to throw some EDR on top or some XDR top and we're going to call it a day. And I think that having a repeatable and very standardized methodology is number one. I think, we have a great example of this. We have something that we utilize as a tool when we're talking to our customers who are trying to ensure that they have a complete cybersecurity strategy. It is called our cyber defense matrix. And the idea of it is it's a true matrix where you have the NIST architecture at the top, identify, detect, protect, respond, all those things. And on the other axis, you actually have asset classifications. So you can physically map out, okay, what are the type of assets that are living within your customer's environment? And what are you doing to identify who has access? How are you detecting? How are you responding? So on and so forth. So I think that that's number one is, you've got to have a repeatable process there. I've already said the incident response thing. I'm a big believer in that. I feel like a lot of people miss when it comes to having an incident response plan. But the third one is that, and might be controversial, this might be a hot take, is that your end customers are your first line of defense. So if they are not trained on how to identify some of the most basic forms of attacks, this is all in vain. And I will say that we do a really good job of showcasing examples of smishing, of phishing, of vishing, all of the things, all the ishings, if you will, because people, I mean, they're, very easy to fool. And especially with I will say that we've actually seen some threat vectors come across my desk where it looks like a company's communication. It's on their letterhead. The verbiage and the tone of it is what you would see. But the only way that I knew that it was a phishing attempt was because the A in one of the words of the email was a Latin A. And I was like, but I'm a cybersecurity gal, so I've grown up and I've known that. So you can do all of these things, but if you're not training your end clients to be able to do a little bit of frontline protection and identification of something that seems kind of fishy, if you will, and I no pun intended, then you're at a loss.
I love that you guys are using the cyber defense matrix. Shout out to Sunil Yu. I know that we had a couple of opportunities, yeah, to work with him. He's no longer with the BOA, which is good for him. But yeah, he's definitely brought a lot of really interesting topics forward with the cyber defense matrix. And that's a good segue into this next question. What's one shift in cyber that you're seeing that will define the next 5 years of the industry? You can say AI, but then you have to choose something else.
Well, see, I'm gonna say AI. So, you set me up there. Now, I have a very unique role in the company. We're talking about cybersecurity, but as I said earlier, my team covers all the disruptive technologies across the board within TD SYNNEX. And we're actually positioning ourselves to no longer look at AI as just a product. We're actually looking at it as an inflection point. So I'm assuming that most people that might listen in or tune in know what a hype cycle is. And a hype cycle is a short period of accelerated growth, 3 to 5 years at max. And usually it dies out whenever a technology becomes irrelevant or the next big thing comes up. Well, a super cycle is a period of growth where there's an introduction of technology that completely changes everything in the technology landscape. And we haven't had one of those since the early 2000s, and that was the data in super cycle, where it was like accessibility to data. We talk about the internet, we talk about connectivity, things of that nature. We are entering a new super cycle, and that is how TD SYNNEX is positioning our portfolio now, where if you're not understanding how AI is impacting whether you're cybersecurity focused, endpoint focused, cloud focused, doesn't matter what your technology background is, you're going to die. It's adapt or die at this point because it is going to change the way things are procured, utilized, managed, serviced, the whole 9 yards. And so that is our story out to the market. And what we have been doing is saying, okay, this is how AI affects every single one of these categories. We're going to talk about the next 3 to 5 years. That's going to be it because hackers are utilizing AI for all of the different types of threat vectors I just talked about, and they're becoming smarter, they're becoming more agile. But at the same time, we have an access to a large amount of data through a lot of our cybersecurity manufacturers that we haven't had previously. And what do you do with a large amount of data? You inject it into an AI engine so it can do pattern correlation and identify new threat vectors. So I think that's the big one. We could go down the road of, okay, when quantum computing goes here, everything we're talking about right now goes out the window, but I don't want to go down that road today because I do not feel like I am the person to speak on that. But that would be the other one if I have to give you one.
Yeah, I always laugh about the quantum one because tons of people will hit me out and be like, "What do you think about quantum?" And I'm like, "Show me when it's real. We'll have the conversation." And it's real at a large scale, but give me a laptop that does quantum computing without blowing up in my face, right? So
Right. When it becomes easily accessible by the public, we'll have that conversation. So maybe that's 5 years from now. And Rick, you can call me and we'll talk about it.
I love it. I love it. I, I always tell people two things about artificial intelligence. The first is, as it pertains to cybersecurity, there have been some version or variation of artificial intelligence being used to defend for 25 years. So it's just ramping it up, right? I mean, that's the first thing that people have to realize. And I think you guys get that as well. The second is what the heck to do with the large language generative AI solutions. And most people think, man, I can turn that on and make efficiencies happen. And I always caution them, and I actually saw TD SYNNEX put something like this out before, but it was, first off, we need to look at your systems. We need to understand your business intelligence to understand this huge chasm of data that you have and how we can build a bridge to either create machine learning automations and workflows or turn on a large language model that's going to make sense. And when you put it in such a simple format, I think people actually understand why AI is important instead of, oh, it's going to tell me how to respond to this email because I'm lazy.
No, no, I completely agree. And, I'm actually learning this myself right now. And I say it's bad data in, bad data out.
Yeah.
And it's all contingent about what you feed it and how you train it. So, and another one of my work streams right now, I'm somewhat becoming a little bit technical because I'm learning how to train an AI bot and an agent. And I'm realizing that it's not, something that people should fear as that it's going to not create jobs or it's going to automate processes that will no longer need human touch. If anything, they need human validation for those processes and to build them and refine them so that they can work and then that person can move on to the next thing. I think it's going to continue to evolve. But you're 100% correct in the way that you're approaching that. But it is, it's not as easy as people think it is. That is what I'm learning in the very, very hard way.
So let's take a hard left turn because we've talked about technology. Sometimes we're surrounded by all of this technology and we lose sight of that human connection. And I know that this is something that you're very passionate about. TD SYNNEX is very passionate about. I've seen posts about Making IT personal. Expound upon that philosophy.
Yep. So our philosophy is, I think that a lot of times people hear our value statements and they're like, this is a huge corporation. I mean, we're the number one IT distributor in the world. And they think that they're going to get lost in the sea of clients that we have. The approach with making IT personal truly is that we have dedicated support to service any and every type of resale model and or vendor to ensure that their go-to-market strategies are vastly different. If I'm more talking to someone who is an SMB client, it's a one or two man shop, and they're servicing very small, let's say, local financial firms, compared to a very large enterprise focus VAR who has 500 people on staff that is, facilitating thousands of managed services a day, the way that we're going to support them and the things that they utilize from our value stack, very, very different. So we ensure that their sales teams, the people that they have access to, the tools, things of that nature are aligning to what makes it personal for them and is going to ensure that we're helping bolster and support their strategy. That's really what making IT personal is. What I will say about my team specifically, what I think is very cool is we're talking about how we're supporting disruptive technologies. We take that methodology and we apply it to the things we put to market. If we're going to continue to use like MSP as an example, we have different MSP enablement processes for someone, let's say, that is a small mom and pop shop compared to what we're going to offer to someone who is an enterprise VAR. So it's definitely something that we integrate into everything because, when we're working, people do business with people. That is what our president always says when you go and see us at a conference or she talks on stage, and you want to make sure that we're talking to you about something that's relevant to your business. So that's really what it symbols.
I love it. So let's take that one step further, right? Making IT personal. Gardner put out that 97% of companies today through the next 5 years are doing some form of digital transformation. Digital transformation is about culture transformation in my mind, but we are not seeing a lot of companies combine that, right? They're saying, I got to do this digital transformation. They're forgetting about the human aspect. What does real transformation look like from your seat at TD SYNNEX?
So I definitely see what you mean by digital transformation and culture transformation being a little bit different. I would probably put those into two separate silos because digital transformation for me is learning how we can enhance our tools, enhance our experiences with our customers, making selling easier, making complex operational processes simplified. That's really how I look at digital transformation, and we're doing a great job of that. We're centralizing all of our external digital strategy. We've done a lot when it comes to the functionality of our platforms and what our customers have access to. But then when I think about culture, especially in this, work from home environment, I was very lucky that, I've been here at TD SYNNEX. I'm working on my ninth year. So I got to experience the culture pre-pandemic and the post-pandemic. And it is different, but it's not different in a bad way. I would say that, the way that we work towards culture is truly making IT personal, is bringing coworkers together. It's highlighting coworkers internally and externally to showcase our diversity, our inclusion, the way that we help support people. But if I had to bridge the two, I think that something that we do really, really well to bridge digital transformation and then cultural transformation is centric to what I would call like voice of the partner or voice of the employee. We don't do things in a silo, and I think that makes us very unique. We definitely survey the broad masses, whether that's internal coworkers or that's partners, to understand what are the common challenges that we're facing with operational processes, with the experience partners are having with it, and how do we change that? So it's not just, someone in leadership saying, "Hey, we got to do X and this is why." It's like, okay, we talk to a cohort of people across all different types of organizations internally, and we talk to a cohort of partners externally, and they all said this one common thing. How do we address this and how do we integrate that into our strategy? So that's how I think we bridge those two.
Augie, you are a breath of fresh air, and now I get to put you on the hot seat. Next few questions, 30 seconds or less, right? Blast through these quick as possible. Some of them are tough. We'll see if you can get there. All right, here we go. What's one cybersecurity myth that you just wish would be destroyed?
That you have to change your passwords every 30 days.
I love it. Love it. I think that's the best one. Why?
Yeah. I mean, you just create a really strong password in the first place, and then you'll be good. You'll be good to go.
It's not though, because like, I'll actually piggyback off of that a little bit. It's been proven that if you choose four-letter words
Mhm.
in any order, or you choose a 12 to 16 character phrase from your favorite movie that you don't say out loud all the time, it's almost unhackable, at least not in our lifetimes. So I agree with you. The 30 day, 90 day, 1 year thing, it's just such a waste. So, all right, next one. 30 seconds or less. Explain zero trust simply.
Identify who has access to your environment, throttle what they have access to, and have a plan in place when something goes wrong.
I
Easy.
love it. How does identity fit into that?
Identity is in the first pillar, in my opinion. So, identification of who has access, whether that be identity access management, privileged access management, anything of that nature, to make sure that they say who they are, where they are, what are they accessing it with.
All right, this one. What's one thing that SMB companies get wrong about cybersecurity budgets?
Not leveraging TD SYNNEX for highly, highly cost inducive projects.
That's amazing. I love it. What is something that you tell the SMBs when they start looking at some of the solutions they can purchase and they just go, I don't know how I'm going to afford this?
Don't never walk away to an opportunity. Call TD SYNNEX Capital, and we will find a way to help you facilitate it.
I love it. All right. If you're building a cyber practice today, where do you start?
I would say, start with us. Go to a cyber range facility. I'm sure that, you've heard about this. Maybe some of our listeners have heard about this. 30 seconds or less, cyber range. We simulate the environment and the technology that you already have deployed or are going to propose to your customer. And then we showcase you different solutions that you can use to secure it, as well as build an incident response plan and give you the expertise and the training to be able to manage that environment.
I will recommend as well. I've had a chance to play with it a couple of times in my life, and it is
Love
like
that.
a demo environment on steroids. It's so much fast. Final question. Actually, there's two questions. This is the 30-second question or less. It might even be less than that. In one or two sentences, what is the future of cybersecurity?
That's a challenging one. Okay. Everybody needs to be doing security. If you're not, then somebody else is, and you're leaving money on the table.
I love it. I will add to that for me, the one thing for cybersecurity is that it no longer is a cost center, it's a business enablement solution.
Yep. I say it is a upsell solution. It's the number one way to upsell an opportunity.
Even better. All right. Why do you love being a cyber professional and why should other people be a cyber pro?
I feel like it makes me feel like a superhero. I'm a nerd at heart. And so if you ever get to talk to me about Marvel or Star Wars or Game of Thrones, anything of that nature, I will talk your ear off for an hour with all of my theories. But I think it's cool to be on the good side and to say, hey, these are the things that we are doing to help protect people, to protect their personal information, to protect their families. I know that sounds a little woo woo rah rah, but I truly feel like we're kind of superheroes at the end of the day.
I love it. Favorite comic book hero?
Iron Man, duh. That's a easy one.
I like it. I like it. So maybe Pepper Potts, right? You could go with like that type of it. I like it. I like it a lot. Mine's Deadpool, so I don't know if we'll ever cross paths there. But Augie, you were amazing today. Thank you so much for being on the Cyber Pro podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, and I can't wait to hear this episode, see all the cool comments that come out of it.